Welcome back to the Hive, everybody. Today we have a really cool show, and it's talking about Speedway. Do you know what Speedway is? We're going to talk about it right now. Let's see, what is Speedway? Well, we start off with 4 riders going around a circle oval track for 4 laps. They go fast. It's 0 to 80 in 2 seconds. Like a rocket ship. Woo! They go fast. And there's no brakes. It's a crazy handlebar to handlebar rubbing motorcycle sport. You gotta have nerves of steel to race Speedway. I'm gonna talk more about that. A Speedway rider is tough. He's fearless. He rides hard, he crashes hard, does everything hard. He's a fearless person. He rides balls to the walls. Can you say balls to the walls? WFO, a Speedway rider really hauls buns. They go fast. They go 4 laps in 1 minute or less. So they go really fast. And they're really just amazing athletes. They're crazy dudes. Have to be a little crazy to race Speedway. Speedway has a beautiful side. It's gorgeous. And a Speedway rider really has one thing in mind, and that's just to win. Speedway riders, good Speedway riders, they want to win. They're competitive athletes, and they really want to win. That's it. And when you win, nothing hurts. And then when you lose, you die alone. And also, crashes are a part of Speedway. The downside, it's serious crashes, serious injury. It's really terrible. So Speedway has a really high up and a really low down. What I mean about the down is that you might be a rider and the race before there's a serious crash. Somebody gets banged up, he breaks his leg, he breaks his back, he gets wheeled off in a stretcher in the ambulance, and you're sitting there and you have the next race and you're watching all this happen. You know, it's not a good feeling when you watch one of your friends go in the ambulance and get taken away to the hospital completely wiped out. And then you're next in line for that licking. And you just have to put it all behind you. And then when you get on that track, you have to say, I'm going to win this race. So Speedway riders have a really good mentality, a tough mentality, because they can experience tragedy. And they're next up. But when you win a Speedway race, particularly a main event, there's a really high feeling. It's a feeling of euphoria. Do you know that euphoria? You know, people take drugs to have euphoria, but euphoria, it's euphoria. But the thing is that when you take the drugs, it's not the euphoria, the natural high you get when you're a Speedway rider. So when you win a big race, especially a main event, or even maybe a race for some people, you get this rush, you get this high, and it's one of the best feelings in the world. And all the money in the world cannot buy that. Also, a Speedway bike is very unique. You know why? Because it's only made to go one direction, and that's turning left. So when you're entering a turn, you have to kind of turn right, counter turn it, and then you start sliding it. A Speedway bike was made to slide. So you turn right to go left, and that's really goes against all scientific thinking. To go right to go left, and you have to have balance on your upper body. you have to have good upper body to hold that speedway bike, because when you ride a speedway bike, who is the boss? The speedway rider. So what makes a speedway bike so unique from other motorsports is there's no brakes to a speedway bike. There's no brakes. Have you ever heard of a motorcycle or a motorsport where they take the brakes off and there's no brakes? And also the riders, they want to go full throttle down the straightaway, let off a little bit, roll the throttle on. Who needs brakes? You go fast. It's a WFO sport. There's no slowing down. It's full speed or get off the track. So a speedway bike doesn't need brakes. Also, if you had brakes on a speedway bike, it would be very dangerous. So let's say you're going down the straightaway and then somebody in front of you put the brakes on and slowed it down and you go into his back end, you crash. So people with brakes, you don't want them on the track. And the speedway bike has no brakes. Also, a speedway bike is a 500cc single-cylinder motorcycle engine, and it has like a 16:1 compression. Has a lot of compression in that bike, and it's just a really fast bike. The bike really hauls, and it's just meant to go fast. The bike is just meant to go one speed, and that's full throttle. It doesn't have a shifter. There's no clutch like for shifting. There is a clutch, but it's not for shifting. And the way the speedway bike goes is that there's two different sprockets. There's a counter shaft, a small one, and there's a rear sprocket. And it has two chains. And you gear those particular counter shaft and rear according to the racetrack. So you actually design that bike to fit that particular racetrack. And that's what makes a speedway bike so unique. You ride a speedway bike a lot different than you ride the other motorcycles. You use a lot of upper body strength, you use your right leg to balance your riding, and you just go ahead and you use different muscles that you don't use. And a speedway rider has a totally different way of riding than, let's say, a motocross rider. And there's some motocross riders who adapt to speedway, and other riders too. But you have to kind of relearn a whole new way of riding, because a speedway rider rides a lot different than all the other motorsports. You have to get up on the handlebars, you have to really ride and really gas it a certain way, you have to have the gearing right, and you just have to have a lot of practice. You gotta have a lot of seat time to be a good speedway rider. Back in the old days, the speedway rider really didn't go to the gym. They just went out and raced, partied, and had a good time. But nowadays, the speedway riders are very serious. They go to the gym, they exercise, they work out. The speedway rider takes a whole new concept of being a speedway rider nowadays. They work hard. Also, in most other motorsports, you gotta have a lot of traction. Traction is the key. However, in speedway, you want to spin that wheel and have less traction when you're in the turn. Because when you're turning, you don't want traction. Why? Because it'll take you right to the wall and it'll crash you. So in speedway, the less traction is better, and you go ahead and you spin that tire. That's why when the riders are riding in the turn, they're giving it a lot of gas and they're feathering that bike. Why? Because they want to spin that tire so they can turn left. Also, a speedway rider must have talent and determination to win that speedway race. He has to have seat time, and most of all, he has to have that will to win, that determination, that go for it, that hunger, that I'm going to win this race. A speedway rider has to be very headstrong, and he must have that desire. He must be thinking. Speedway is a thinking man's sport. You know, sometimes when I was racing, when I was younger, a lot of the riders, they would go real fast and they would give it all they had like that. However, in speedway, you got to use your mind. You have to know when to go on, you have to know when to go off. It's a thinking man's sport. A speedway rider is a thinker. He's not just a guy with throttle, but he thinks. thinks about everything. He thinks about who he's racing with. He thinks about every second. Speedway goes fast. It's a fast-moving sport. So a Speedway rider has to have a split-second reaction. And his reaction must be correct. He must have good thinking. And he must make the right decisions in a split second. And a Speedway rider must be headstrong. He must have that determination and that will to win. He must be a really strong-headed guy. And it's, Speedway is not a team sport. It's an individual sport. So everything is upon your head. You go out there in a stadium in front of a lot of people, and guess what? You have nobody to hide behind. Let's say in a team sport like football or baseball or whatever. I mean, in Speedway, you're all alone. And when you win, you look pretty good. And when you don't win, you may not look so good. A Speedway rider is fearless. He has to have that split-second decision. He has to have a good equipment. He has to have a good bike. And he has to go to the gym. He has to be in good shape. The Speedway rider has a lot of things he has to be nowadays to be a top-level rider. And a Speedway rider is really a gifted athlete. In high-level competition, the difference between first place and fourth place is razor thin. So every Speedway rider must have every little edge so they can win that race. Also, Speedway is dangerous. There's crashes. Every year, 33%, 1/3 of the Speedway riders are injured. They have to stay home, they have to heal. Healing is a very horrible thing, especially a serious injury. You're home all day, nobody's there, you're in pain, and you're healing sometimes for weeks at a time. So the Speedway rider has a really dangerous profession. It's dangerous to get wheeled off and to be taken to the hospital and to be messed up and then the pain. And those are all things that people don't really see. Also, every year in Speedway, the technology gets better. The bikes get faster and faster. The crashes get harder and harder. In Europe, they have the air fences, which is really great because some of those GP riders, they go really fast. And when they hit that air fence, it does cushion the fall. However, the Speedway technology continues to get better and better and faster and faster. And that means the crashes get more and more hard and they hurt. There is a discussion in Speedway nowadays that Speedway, a sport, is in decline. And some people think that Speedway need more different characters, like the Bumblebee right here. I need to go back racing. And Speedway needs a different colorful characters. And sometimes the spectators get a little bored with them, maybe no character. So hopefully somebody can devise something in Speedway where they can have more characters. But the thing is, Speedway rider is such an intense sport. The riders, they don't want to think about being a character. They want to think about winning. So there is a little bit of a problem there because some of the fans, they want to see more colorful riders and they want to see more excitement that way. And the Speedway riders want to focus on winning. So what is Speedway? It's a fast, exciting, fearless, dangerous sport. A Speedway rider is a unique individual, and he has a little craziness inside. Speedway is one of the greatest motorsports around. It's really cool. If you're a Speedway rider, you're pretty cool also. So we ask ourselves this question like, what is Speedway? What is Speedway? Speedway is one of the most unbelievable sports on the earth.